Sono entusiasta di essere qui. All right. Every organization is asking the same question. What should we do with AI? Sounds reasonable, sounds strategic, but this is the wrong question. It focuses you on outputs. You look at your workflows and think, which of this stuff can AI produce faster? Which documents, which emails, which slide decks? You optimize for speed and cost of production. You get a faster horse, a shinier horse. But at the end of the day, it's still a horse. So let me propose a different question. What would you do with 1,000 employees? This framing changes your thinking. You stop thinking about what documents to produce faster and start thinking about what you would actually want a larger organization to accomplish. What new markets would you enter? What problems would you tackle that you've never had the capacity to solve? It focuses you on outcomes, not outputs. This is a much more robust foundation for an AI strategy. Now, employees are not a perfect metaphor. There are obvious differences. AI can scale and act tirelessly in ways that humans cannot. But it also lacks the socially embedded judgment and, crucially, the accountability that humans bring and which cannot be delegated. Acknowledging that caveat, let's see how far the employee metaphor can take us in helping us think about AI as an organizational resource. We can quantify the effective work available to an organization through AI. Studies converge on a range. Today, knowledge workers are already 1.2 to 1.6 times as productive with AI compared to without, and in some controlled settings as much as 2 times. So 1,000 human employees becomes the effective equivalent of 1,500 or 2,000. At the same time, the cost of AI is falling at roughly 10-fold per year for a model of equivalent capability. So a $20 subscription today buys enough tokens for one person's work. In a few years, it will buy enough for 100 and then 1,000. But tokens without supervision are just tokens. The gains all come from tasks where AI helps while a human is steering. Drafting, coding, analysis, communication, they all need people in the loop to prompt, review, verify, integrate. So the first bottleneck to scaling AI productivity is human attention, not cost. Right? Now, the counterpart to human attention is AI autonomy. How much work can AI do unsupervised? The technology is making progress here. Modeling by meter suggests that the length of tasks that AI can do unsupervised is doubling every 7 months. So a year ago, AI could do tasks that would have taken a human a few minutes. Today, it can do tasks of a few hours. Soon, it will do tasks that would have taken a human days or weeks. So if you take these 3 observations together, the fact that AI amplifies individual productivity, that the cost of AI is falling, and that autonomy is increasing, you can estimate when this crossover point happens, when your $20 subscription will buy you the effective equivalent of 1,000 employees. And for many professions, that crossover point is coming in the next few years. But I want to go one step further. Even if we had 1,000 autonomous AI employees tomorrow, the question would remain, what would you have them do? Human intention is the deeper bottleneck. Right? What are your employees actually having their agents work on? How do they decide what matters? How you cultivate that intentionality, that clarity of purpose, is what will separate organizations that get real value from AI from those that simply accelerate their existing busy work. How will you escape the trap of generating slightly better formatted versions of documents that didn't need to exist in the first place? Right? If you will soon have affordable access to the effective work of 1,000 employees, will you have 1,000 things worth doing? Our research tells us that the answer has 4 parts: critical thinking, goals, teamwork, and culture. Let's take each of these in turn. In a previous talk, I spoke about thinking at the individual level, at the level of tightly scoped tasks. There, my focus was on how to stay cognitively engaged when AI accelerates production. I spoke about provocations, material engagement, and strategies to keep thinking critically. Those principles still apply, but the world has shifted. AI has become massively more agentic. Developers are using tools, like Claude Code and Copilot CLI and Codex. Knowledge workers are using increasingly autonomous assistants that can act across files and applications, and they can tackle big and complex tasks. I recently had an AI agent refactor an entire code base while I made tea. I came back to either a masterpiece or a disaster. I'm not entirely sure which. But you can see how this changes the game for how we think about thinking. The classic way of evaluating the effect of AI on human thinking was to compare. Here's how someone did some task with AI. Here's how they did it without AI. What's the difference, right? But that comparison breaks down when the task only exists because AI made it possible. Across knowledge work, we are seeing new workflows where there's no plausible scenario in which someone would have done that work without AI, right? So the old experimental comparison just doesn't apply. You can't compare someone doing a task with and without AI if the task is rewrite your entire document management system, overnight. So where do our principles fit? They still apply, but they have to operate at a new level. Not necessarily at the level of every sentence AI generates or every line of code it writes, although those are still important. This is an ongoing area of research, and I don't have all the answers. But one interesting development is the idea of plans. AI can generate a step-by-step execution plan before it goes off to do some long-running task. How do we use this plan as a surface for critical thinking? That's exactly what we tested recently in an experiment with over 200 participants, where each participant was reviewing AI-generated execution plans. We tested 2 different designs that targeted different critical thinking skills. One asked participants to examine the assumptions behind the step of a plan, and another asked them to imagine what would happen if a key step failed. We found that the assumptions surfacing intervention was the most effective at reducing over-reliance while maintaining cognitive load. Right? The lesson here is, when you're evaluating an AI plan, interrogate the premises. Interestingly, users preferred the other one, even though it was measurably less effective. So what feels like critical thinking and what actually constitutes it are not the same thing, are not always the same thing. Next, let's talk about goals. My colleagues ran a series of experiments studying what happens when people are guided to articulate their goals before, during, and after meetings. It turns out that good goals have 3 parts: your purpose, your success criteria, and your challenges for success. Meetings are very inefficient when these are not articulated, and they are often not articulated. But when they're articulated early, something as simple as stating why you're holding a meeting, this has massive productivity uplift for the entire workflow. Revolutionary, I know. But beyond just improving meetings, goal information is going to have immense cascading value for AI, because better goal information leads to better AI responses downstream. The value is compounding, since meeting information flows into documents, into emails, and every other tool in the ecosystem. So goal articulation becomes a kind of upstream investment that pays dividends everywhere. Another way to look at it is, if you don't know why you're doing something, neither will your AI system. The machine cannot rescue vagueness from itself. That brings me to teamwork. Delacroix and colleagues ran a field experiment of nearly 800 professionals solving real product innovation challenges. They had 4 conditions: individuals without AI, individuals with AI, teams without AI, and teams with AI. They found that individuals with AI could meet and even exceed the performance of teams without it. So AI genuinely raises the flow. But the best performance, by a clear margin, came from human teams working with AI. This group was 3 times as likely to produce solutions in the top decile. So AI can raise the floor, but only humans can raise the ceiling. Finally, let's talk about culture. Our research is uncovering 2 distinct cultural dynamics that shape which organizations succeed with AI. In the vicious cycle, people are stigmatized for using AI, or they fear they will be, so they hide it. Our study of knowledge workers across multiple sectors found that the ability to remove traces of AI use was perceived as a professional competence in its own right. One professional even told us, if you're very clever, no one knows you've used it. But this cleverness has corrosive consequences. When everyone conceals their use, no one learns from anyone else. The knowledge that would accelerate the organization stays trapped in individual workflows, and collective capability stagnates. In the virtuous cycle, the opposite happens. People make their AI use visible. A study of over 500 workers at major US firms found that peer influence is the single most important driver of AI adoption. Right? Peer influence is self-reinforcing. When a worker reported that they had learned some AI technique from a colleague, they were 14 percentage points more likely to have taught someone else in turn. So what can leaders do to ensure that their organization tips into the virtuous cycle? Well, what we know is that direct leadership encouragement to use AI has no effect. But leaders can have an indirect effect. Those who create an environment for peer learning saw significantly higher peer influence in their teams, right? The leaders who mandated AI adoption and training were not successful. The ones who were successful were those who made their AI use visible, who modeled AI use in meetings, who shared their own experiments and failures, and created the permission to explore, the willingness to learn in public. You cannot download and install this. It doesn't come in a premium subscription tier, right? Don't force AI on people and then step back. That's not the answer. The answer is to build a culture that understands how organizations learn through peer teaching, through making technology use visible and debatable and contestable, through informal knowledge sharing that no training module can replicate, and through collaboration that no individual, however well augmented, can match alone. So what would you do with 1,000 employees? This is really a question about what kind of organization you want to be. The organization that focuses on accelerating outputs will find itself in a race to the bottom. But if it is the race to the top you seek, you will find that the road is paved with good intentions. Output is no longer scarce. What is scarce is intention, it's culture, it's the quality of your goals, it's the strength of your teams. The organizations that thrive will be those that invest as seriously in their people as they do in their technology. Thank you.